USC football is in for a huge season in 2026. Lincoln Riley has got some things to prove, but the USC fans have a lot to be excited about. We're going to be previewing the entire 2026 season, going to be talking storylines, narratives, offense, defense, and then end it all with our floor and ceiling of the record this season, and then answer the biggest question: can they make the playoffs? Spoiler alert, yes, USC can make the playoffs, but we'll talk about exactly what that record might look like for them to have to get there. And as always, we have Zach Guggenheim here with us to break it all down. Zach, let's just go ahead and start it off right away. What to you is the biggest storyline, narrative, like the biggest talking point for USC going into this 2026 season?
They all revolve around USC breaking through the playoff to the playoff. And I think there's a few parts to that.
Mm-hmm.
So one is, can Lincoln Riley become a championship caliber coach? Can he essentially prove what people have thought he was back when he first started? That's one. Two, can USC stake a claim as a Big Ten power? And will they be able to finally field a championship caliber defense? I think those three things are all tied up into, can USC break through to the playoff?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot in there about Lincoln Riley and what his future at USC is as well, right? Because if they don't make the playoffs, then, and I think some USC fans have been questioning this for a while now, so we're not the first ones, obviously, but this is kind of the season because USC is kind of bringing everybody back, and you've got a whole lot of really good freshmen that are coming back too. I mean, obviously you don't bring back Mekhi Lemon or Jacoby Lane, but your running backs are coming back. You have a key defensive lineman coming back, Jada Mayava. I think this is the best offensive line that USC has had under Lincoln Riley. Spoiler alert when we preview the offense, where I'm going to be going with that. And then on the defensive line, on the defensive side, you have Gary Patterson, who should, with his wealth of experience, be able to come in and lead a very competent, if not very good defense for USC. But Zach, if I'm being honest, I don't think this defense has to be anything more than very competent. I don't think they have to necessarily be great or anything like that. Obviously, if they get there, they can be. But if USC just comes out with a solid, competent, good tackling, not a whole lot of mistakes type of defense, this Lincoln Riley offense with Jada Mayava, the offensive line, Wayman Jordan, should be able to move the ball down the field well enough that they should be able to beat just about anybody they play, if not anybody they play.
Yeah, I think there is, and we'll talk about this more as we get into offense, defense. There is one position group where I am a little concerned.
Go ahead and just do what you want. We'll transition into it.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about sound tackling, good defense. As long as they're sound, that's good. I think the defensive line is going to be good. I think the linebackers, they bring back everybody, at least all the starters. I think there's real hope at corner that I'm really, I think, excited about for corner. But I think the position group I'm really concerned about is safety. And can safety, we've seen the safety position derail a season for other teams in the past. They need to be good. They don't need to be elite, but they need to be good. Because if you're not good, you can get a lot of points scored on you really quick. And so I think it's Christian Pierce and Urlacher are the projected starters right now. Urlacher comes over from Notre Dame. Or he was at Notre Dame last year, I believe. Christian Pierce, 4-star recruit in 23. They're not rated great, at least according to Punt and Rally. And that would be my big concern is I think you have guys at corner. I'm a little concerned about safety.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. You lose Bishop Fitzgerald. To me, if Bishop Fitzgerald was coming back, I would be very, very confident in this defense this year. And that's not to say anything bad about Christian Pierce or Kennedy Urlacher or anybody else at safety. kind of similar to what I said earlier about the defense. They just need to be reliable. They don't
Yep.
have like a true alpha in the safety room for them, which is fine. I don't think you need a
Mhm.
Caleb Downs. I don't think you need, a Coy Parrish or what he was his freshman year and guys like that. I think you just need a reliable safety. Jalen McClain was that for Ohio State last season. He had three touchdown saving tackles against Michigan. That doesn't get noticed very much, but when
Yeah.
Ohio State played Michigan, and I know this is an Ohio State example, and we're on USC, but just bear with me for a second. If you watch those Ohio State Michigan games the past few years, a lot of times Michigan was getting scores off of the big runs. That was kind of their bread and butter to be able to score. Not all the time, of course, they were able to move the ball down the field sometimes, but that was one of their biggest things. Well, you saw what happened with USC last year, being able to stop many of the big runs against Michigan. You saw Ohio State stop many of the big breakaway runs. They still had some big runs, but breakaway ones against Michigan last year. And so if USC can have a safety that's reliable to do that, that can be that deep guy, have the speed, have the reliability to take good angles and get tackles, I think this defense could really thrive off of what I perceive to be the group that I'm most confident in for the defense, and that's the defensive line. I feel really good about the defensive line for USC, and that's one of the things that
Mhm.
gives me the most confidence. I'm in on the cornerbacks, like you said, but to me, if USC is going to be a playoff team this year, it comes with guys like Cameron Crawford and Jakeem Stewart and Zariah Fisher coming over from Penn State. These are guys that have experience, have played. They
Yep.
haven't necessarily been the true alpha, but I would say that all three of those guys have the opportunity to maybe not be like the best defensive end in the Big Ten, but certainly first team or second team all Big Ten. And if USC has somebody like that on their defensive line, then you're looking at what could be a really special season for the defense this year. Maybe not, number one defense in the country, but like I said, competent enough, good enough to be able to set up the offense well to be able to get wins.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the defensive line because I think they have a lot of seniority. Obviously, Zariah Fisher coming up from Penn State, he adds good depth, and you have a lot of excitement with the freshmen coming in. Luke Wafel, we talked about him earlier this year. I think it's Simote Katanaga is another four-star guy who I don't know if he's going to start right away. He certainly doesn't have the same amount of hype as Luke Wafel, but like they have a lot of guys on the defensive line and particularly at edge where both proven guys and also young pups who can bite. And I think that gives you a lot of excitement for splash plays.
All right, so if we transition over to offense now, we can talk about who we're most, confident in and maybe least confident in. I'll start with my most confident since I said it earlier. Offensive line. I feel very confident in the offensive line this season. You have Elijah Page, Justin Tuniamu, to Anu, I believe is how you pronounce it. Tobias Raymond, Killian O'Connor. You have a lot of guys on this offensive line for USC that have either started or played substantial time before, and so that obviously gives you a lot of experience, a lot of guys that have played together before, and so this is a very good situation for USC and probably USC's best offensive line that they've ever had under Lincoln Riley. I mean, there are some places out there like Phil Steele and Bleacher Report that are ranking them in the top 5 of offensive lines in the country, which I think, if you're USC and you feel like you have a top 5 offensive line in the country, it's kind of been one of the things you've been missing for a while. So great
Mhm.
work by Lincoln Riley to put that together. The only thing that I would kind of ding USC for on offense, and not necessarily ding, but just have a little bit of concern about, it's not what the position I'm most confident in is honestly probably tight end. You have Tucker Ashcraft coming over from Wisconsin, so I do like that you have some experience there. But I think you're going to be relying a lot on your incoming 5-star freshman and Mark Bowman. And I'm not going to say that Mark Bowman's going to be bad or anything like that, but he also did reclassify. He's a younger guy. He's going to be playing on the line of scrimmage. Zach, to me, one of the people that benefited most from the new 5-year rule that came into play was the guys who play on the line of scrimmage. I'm talking about your defensive linemen, your offensive linemen, and your tight
Yep.
ends. And we've talked about on this show that tight ends have kind of been a little bit of the secret sauce. It's not really the sexy position anybody wants to talk about, but I mean, Indiana had a really good tight end and Riley Nowakowski. Ohio State had a really good tight end and G. Scott with what he was able to do. Obviously, Michigan has had really good tight ends here for a while. If you have a really solid tight end, it can do a lot for you. But if you don't have a tight end that can kind of clean up the stuff and do the dirty stuff for you, it does begin to stick out at some point. I'm not saying that USC doesn't have one, but it's just probably the position group on offense I am least confident they don't have one because I've not really seen the production in a USC offense from a Mark Bowman or a Tucker Ashcraft yet. That's not to say they can't. I just saying I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I think to go off of that, I'm a little concerned about receiver. Not because I don't think Tanook Hines isn't good, and not because I think Terrell Anderson, who comes over from NC State, is good. I think they've recruited the position well, but you lose a first round talent in Lemon, and you lose a really good veteran in Jacoby Lane. And so you match that up with uncertainty at the tight end position, which you need both for blocking and for receiving. We're all hyped about Jaden Mayava. Like, I dare say not just a dark horse Heisman contender, but like could legitimately win the award if USC goes to where we think they could. But I'm concerned about his collection of talent. Not that I think they're bad, but I'm not sure I am super excited about them like I would be other teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Jada Mayava right now on FanDuel has plus 2,700 odds to win the Heisman, and I mean that's like my favorite, not my favorite to win it, but like my favorite sleeper to win it. He has worse odds than Keelan Russell, who hasn't even won the job at Alabama yet. So as far as I'm concerned, like you've got a really good opportunity here to have somebody that maybe not a lot of people are thinking about to possibly win the Heisman. He does have higher odds than like Marcel Reed and Malachi Toney and guys like that, so he's not a complete sleeper, but still somebody that doesn't have top 5 or odds or something like that. So, and I see what you're saying about wide receivers. It's just so difficult for me to try and like look at the wide receiver position and say I'm not confident in it with Lincoln Riley, right?
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I'm not saying I'm not confident that they won't be good. I'm not confident that they will be elite.
And I think that's what I was going to say was like, I'm confident they have really good players in the wide receiver room, but we just haven't seen them for USC, similar to Mark Bowman. Nobody is arguing that Mark Bowman is not going to be a good tight end in college. He's going to be excellent. He's probably going to be a first-round pick at some point. But you have a guy in Tanook Hines who missed the spring, true sophomore. He's going to probably be your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. Terrell Anderson comes over from NC State. Listen, folks, this isn't the same Big Ten that it was, right? Like, this isn't the same Big Ten where a guy can just transfer in from the ACC and be okay. You are stepping up a level coming in from the ACC to the Big Ten. It's just a matter of fact. You didn't always be able to say that, but now you can say that, and so it is a bigger deal in my opinion. So this is something that I'm not saying Terrell Anderson won't be good or anything like that, but it is something where I'm like, okay, I do want to see this happen because how many guys have we said are going to transfer into the Big Ten and be good, and they either didn't start or didn't play very well at all. I can think of a couple guys on the offensive line for Ohio State that's happened with, but Ohio State is by no means the only team it's happened to. It's happened with other teams as well.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
I will say though, and you were talking about the offensive line, by the way, shout out to Kenny Pepe, the 5-star talent who's I think 6'7", 330 pounds. He's a freshman. If there's some shenanigans happening on that offensive line, watch out for that mountain of a man. That
he might be playing right tackle for him. We'll see.
Yeah. So, I mean, but they've got some good running backs running behind that line too. And Waymon Jordan, King Miller. I think they together had over 1,500 yards rushing last year. Both averaged over 6 yards a carry. The offensive backfield, along with Mayava, is really, really good. You could argue top 3 in the Big Ten in terms of quarterback running back combo. Yeah. And I think if you have that, it does take pressure off of the passing game, especially when you talk about the offensive line being potentially as good as it could be. I still have questions about the offensive line not their continuity. Like the continuity is amazing, but can that translate into the next step that they need to take in the maturation process? That's my question for the offensive line. But if that hits, you've got a top 3 backfield in the conference, probably a top 5 to top 10 backfield in the country. That will carry you to a lot of wins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you want a lot of wins, you got to do it against a pretty tough schedule here that we have between us
That is the
going on.
one problem.
Now, the out of conference for USC, they still do not play an FCS team, which USC fans are very proud of. They do not play FCS teams, which bravo, USC. You don't do that, but you also play at 9 o'clock at night and 11 o'clock at night against Fresno State and the Raging Canes or the Raging Cajuns. So, gonna need my coffee those nights over here on the East Coast.
I'm going to need to find a Raising Canes for when they play the Raging Cajuns.
There you go. So San Jose State, Fresno State, Louisiana, Raising Cajuns. There's no issues there. They're going to win 3 games there. Nobody's disputing that at all. And then you have at Rutgers. I do think this is kind of a similar test to what you saw against at Purdue last season, right? They went across the country and they played at Purdue. Purdue was obviously a team that should not beat USC, and they did not beat USC, but it is a good first road trip. And then from there, you get 3 pretty tough games: Oregon, Washington, at Penn State. You get 2 byes for USC because they play in week 0, which is fantastic. The only problem is you get that bye at Wisconsin, Ohio State. You get that bye at Indiana, Maryland, at UCLA. So you are playing 2, of your tougher opponents either right after the bye or a week or 2 after the bye. Mm-hmm. So that helps you there to be prepared for that. But as we've talked about before, if you look at the entire Big Ten schedule, USC is absolutely screwed. Ohio State gets a bye before they travel to them. Indiana gets a bye before they play them. You get Oregon not really playing anybody until Oregon plays USC, so they're going to have a little bit they can hold back. USC will probably be able to hold some back too, but at least they do get them at home. So this is not an easy schedule for USC, Zach. What would you say the ceiling is for USC's record in 2026?
Yeah, so I think the ceiling, and I like this exercise, because when we say ceiling, this is not a projection. It's like, what's the best case scenario? Mm-hmm. And like we just got done talking, like if the offensive line hits like we think it could, you have a Heisman level caliber quarterback. You have 2 really good running backs. If Waymon Jordan doesn't get hurt, like that's a really effective 1-2 punch that not a lot of other teams have. And if Gary Patterson gets that defense right, I think even with this hard schedule, I think 11-1 is not out of reach. You look at those first 6 games, and I know they're all hard. They get Oregon and Washington at home. And while traveling to Penn State is difficult, I'm still unsure of Penn State's talent level. And so do I think that's a tricky road game? Yes. Do I think that USC is quite a bit more talented than Penn State? Yes. Like, I think if we're talking about tiers of talent, USC is closer to Ohio State and Oregon than they are to Penn State. Like, I think Penn State is significantly lower talent-wise. They're tough, but I think talent-wise, USC is fairly above Penn State. And then I think Wisconsin, at Wisconsin's tricky, but again, I don't think USC is. I think there's a pretty sizable gap talent-wise. And then you have Ohio State and at Indiana. I think I think they could split those games. And then they finish with Maryland and they play at UCLA. I think at UCLA is going to be tough, but I think in terms of a ceiling, USC has more talent than UCLA. They should win that game. So I think 11-1 is the ceiling.
I hate to sound like a hater here, but I think 10-2 is the ceiling for me.
Okay.
There's just too much on the schedule. You got Oregon, Washington, at Penn State. We want to say at Wisconsin is a less talented team, and while I agree, ask Washington about playing at Wisconsin last year, right? Washington's been another team that's kind of struggled on the roads, traveling. Good.
Are we assuming that Luke Fickell still has his job?
I I would assume so, but I guess not. I mean, but even if they don't, Mike Tressel might get the job, and he coaches really good defense. So who knows? I don't know.
That does not inspire confidence. Anyway, keep going. Keep going.
I'm just saying, I don't think at Wisconsin is like the cupcake that like Purdue is, or Maryland or something like that. I don't even know if Maryland's a complete cupcake this season. I just have a lot of confidence in USC because it's at home and Maryland's going across the country, and as we know,
It's in
Maryland on
November.
the road. Not
It's in
in.
November.
I was gonna say not in August or September. So we're feeling good about that one. And man, Ohio State at Indiana, it's it's pretty tough for me. So the win total for USC right now on FanDuel sits at, if I was a good host, I would have had this pulled up beforehand. Sits at 8.5. I think it's pretty ambitious to say the ceiling is 11-1 when the win total is at 8.5. So I'm going to go 10-2, but I do think that USC is going to be good enough this season that there's not the like fall off opportunity. I think their floor is 8-4. I think they have too much talent. I think they have too much coming back to get less than 8 wins. And that means they would have to beat, some of these better teams. But I think they're going to get 8 wins at the very least. So high floor, kind of high ceiling, but maybe not as high as some USC fans want.
So this kind of exposes how we view the exercise. I have their floor at 6-6.
Ooh.
And I think part of it, this is not my projection. We're going to do a projection too, right? Like what we actually think is going to happen. Or is that
just like a rough one. Not going to lock it in, but like a rough one.
Yeah. But I think so. And just so, and maybe I think this is maybe different how you and I view this. When I think of ceiling, I think what is the absolute best case? Like it's maybe the 1% chance, but like I think it's possible. I think the floor is, to me, is like, okay, if the wheels fall off this thing, like what happens? And that's what I mean by the floor is 6-6. Like I think you win those first 3 easily, and then at Rutgers, like you don't lose that game, but I think that tires you out, which sets you up for 3 straight losses. And then at Wisconsin, I think you're right. It's no joke. At Wisconsin and Ohio State, I think they probably would split those two in a floor scenario. At Indiana, I think would be a loss, and I think at UCLA in a floor scenario would be a loss because I don't think UCLA is a cupcake like they've been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think I see the bottom falling out for this USC team. I think there's too much talent. Like I understand what you're saying about the floor is like, oh well, if the bottom completely falls out, I just don't think I see the bottom falling out, in this type of scenario. So there are other teams I think definitely the bottom could fall out. I think as much as I like Bob Chesney and UCLA, I do think the bottom could kind of fall out and they could go 4-8 this season. We'll talk about them when we get to their season preview. But I don't think that's going to happen with Lincoln Riley this season. Let's do it this way. What's your rough season projection on the record right now, and how many wins do they need to get into the playoffs?
They need 10.
I think they only need 9.
Okay.
If they get really, really favorable stuff around them and the SEC's, 9-game conference schedule really hurts them, I could see USC sneaking in at, with 9 wins.
I don't know. I think the problem,
if they beat Oregon but lose at Penn State, and Penn State is a 9-3 or like an 8-4 team this season, I think they could get in.
There's a difference between can and will. I think they can get in a 9-3. I don't know if they will.
Yeah.
So I'll stick to 10 because I think 10 is where they're safe. Unfortunately, I have 9-3.
Yeah, I've got 9-3. I think is how they're going to finish too. I think they're going to get one of Oregon, Ohio State, or Indiana. Probably Oregon or Ohio State because those are at home. But I think they slip up somewhere else, either at Penn State or at UCLA or at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I think they slip up, or Washington at home. I think they slip up someplace else, and then I think they get one of either Oregon or Ohio State or Indiana. So.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on USC, Zach?
No, I think USC fans should be excited, and I'll just say this: 9-3 with this schedule. I know everybody wants the playoff, but like that's significant progress, and like people will be disappointed, but like 9-3 is a really good season for USC.
I would love the chaos of 9-3, but they get it as the 11th seed.
I'd love that.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Get in over Alabama. That'd be great.
That'd be great. That'd be great. All right. This was our first season preview of the Big Ten teams. Come check it out on the playlist. We're going to be doing more. Zach and I are actually about to do Minnesota right after this. So, check them out as they continue to come out. USC for now, more to come. Thanks for joining us. Please do like, subscribe, do all that good stuff here at the Big Ten Huddle. 5-star rating and review on podcast as well. Presented and brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate you being here. Have a good one. We'll see you on the next one.